everyone, I'm Vladimir Duthier.
And I'm Anne-Marie Green. We're going to take you straight to Fox Lake in Illinois, where a press conference has begun. If you remember, about a month ago, a police officer was shot and killed there, and it sparked a manhunt. We're getting new information about what caused his death.
Of Lieutenant Joseph Gliniewicz. Since day one of this incident, investigators have tirelessly worked day and night, diligently searching for answers. This investigative team included members of the Lake County Major Crime Task Force, as well as our federal partners, the FBI, the ATF, Secret Service, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Marshal Service. This was an extraordinarily complex investigation with many moving parts, which resulted in over 150 separate investigators spending over 25,000 hours investigating this case. Over 430 leads were examined. Over 250 pieces of evidence were collected and submitted to local and federal crime labs for analysis. Thousands of pages of financial documents were reviewed. Over 6,500 pages of text messages were reviewed just from Lieutenant Gliniewicz's personal cell phone. Over 30,000 telephone numbers were reviewed for comparison. Over 40,000 emails were reviewed. During this process, we appreciate the cooperation and assistance from the Village of Fox Lake and Village Administrator Ann Marin. The interests of justice require a methodical, thorough, and complete investigation. This has been done. Even though some developed their own theories or felt a need to criticize, we had a job to do, and we have done it. While some wanted the results fast, we wanted them right. We were obligated to prove our conclusions before we reported to you and the public we serve. We are thankful for the support and patience of the Fox Lake and surrounding communities while we inspected all of the evidence, systematically explored every tip, every lead, and every possible option. Today, we will discuss the findings and conclusions of our investigation into the death of Lieutenant Gliniewicz. We have two principal speakers, Lake County Major Crime Task Force Commander George Falenko and Lake County Coroner Dr. Rudd. We will take questions at the end of the statement and ask that all questions be held until then. I'm first going to turn the mic over to Commander Falenko.
Good morning. We're here this morning to wrap up the investigation into the death of Lieutenant Charles Joseph Gliniewicz. This extensive investigation has concluded with an overwhelming amount of evidence that Gliniewicz's death was a carefully staged suicide. We have determined this staged suicide was the end result of extensive criminal acts that Gliniewicz had been committing. In fact, he was under increasing levels of personal stress from scrutiny of his management of the Fox Lake Police Explorer Unit. We have the highest degree of confidence in the facts which led us to this conclusion, which Lake County Coroner Dr. Rudd will confirm. In addition, we have concurrence of our investigative partners, federal, state, including the FBI, their Behavioral Analysis Unit, and the ATF. With those partners, our investigation strongly indicates criminal activity on the part of at least two other individuals. Because that part of the investigation is open and will be ongoing, we will have no further comment on that aspect of the investigation. Here's a brief summary of the important elements of the investigation which led us to these conclusions. Further elaboration and further detailed information regarding these facts are provided to all of you in your handouts. The investigation found Gliniewicz had been stealing and laundering money from the Fox Lake Police Explorer Post. This had been occurring over the past 7 years. Gliniewicz was also found to have forged signatures on official documents. Thousands of dollars were used by Gliniewicz for personal purchases, travel expenses, mortgage payments, personal gym memberships, adult websites, facilitating personal loans, and unaccounted cash withdrawals. The documents discovered with forged signatures were requisitions for federal surplus equipment and official Police Explorer documents. We recovered electronic messages that were deleted from Gliniewicz' personal and work cellular phone, including incriminating statements that had been deleted prior to his suicide. A selection of those deleted messages is available in your media handout packets as well. Our investigation has determined conclusively that Gliniewicz intentionally left a staged trail of police equipment at the crime scene. Analysts determined the trail of equipment consisting of pepper spray, a baton, and his personal glasses was an attempt to mislead first responders and investigators to believe this was a homicide scene. It was learned through investigation Gliniewicz had significant experience staging mock crime scenes for Police Explorer training. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has concurred that this was a staged scene, in part because there were no signs of Gliniewicz being dragged after the initial shot and no physical signs that he fought for his life. We have also concluded that Gliniewicz strategically aimed the first of two shots from his own weapon at the lower abdominal area, striking his cellular phone and bulletproof vest, which absorbed most of the impact of the first shot. Advanced ballistic testing with the use of ultraviolet photographic equipment conducted by the Northern Illinois Regional Crime Lab confirmed both gunshots were fired at close range. Gunshot residue was found in the interior of Gliniewicz's bulletproof vest cover when the second fatal round was fired, which indicates the gun was placed underneath the vest carrier when the fatal round was fired. As we pursued the Gliniewicz investigation, all possible death scenarios were considered, including the possibilities of homicide as well as suicide. In this manner, we presumed no facts prior to or during the investigation. We had no preconceived notions as to what occurred, nor did we prejudge the outcome of this investigation. Justice and our system of law demand nothing less. There are no winners here. Gliniewicz committed the ultimate betrayal to the citizens he served and the entire law enforcement community. The facts of his actions prove he behaved for years in a manner completely contrary to the image he portrayed. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Thomas Rudd.
Good morning. I'm the Lake County Coroner. I have two statements to make before we review the findings of the autopsy. First, I want to acknowledge the hard work done by all of law enforcement agencies involved in investigating the scene and circumstances of the death of this officer. What appeared to be a slow process was done, in my opinion, in a very timely manner. Second, by law, the Lake County Coroner's Office is mandated to investigate all deaths within our jurisdiction, which means within Lake County. We are to do the cause of death as well as the manner of death. The cause of death of Lieutenant Gliniewicz was established as a result of objective scientific medical evidence obtained at the autopsy. This office follows the principles and protocols of the National Association of Medical Examiners. The cause of death was published earlier, approximately 10 days after his death by me in a newspaper article that said there was a catastrophic gunshot wound to the torso. We can now expand on that. As Chief Alenko said, this appears to be a staged suicide, and the first shot hit his right chest region. It went through the phone, lodged into his bulletproof vest. It did not penetrate his skin. Therefore, it did not penetrate any body cavity, either the pleural or the abdominal. It was just below the right costal margin, or just below the rib cage. However, it did cause a bruise that measured 4 inches by 4 inches. It was reddish pink, indicating a recent injury by the bullet. Excuse me. This means that the small blood vessels ruptured in the superficial surface of the skin. These are the capillaries that are easily damaged. The fatal catastrophic gunshot wound, as Chief Alenko said, was in the left upper chest. It was located approximately 2 inches below the collar of the bulletproof vest. Therefore, the gun had to be placed in such an angle that the gun was close to the chest. It went under the vest at a 40-degree angle, which was confirmed by the trajectory of the bullet. It hit the pulmonary artery, causing massive blood loss, approximately 1,200 cc's, which would be equivalent to a little less than 3 pints of blood. As this officer is bleeding internally, the lung is collapsing. There's atelectasis occurring. Blood is filling up into the lung. The bullet then hits the left hilum. This is a region where the major bronchi and blood vessels go in and out of the lung. It courses through the bottom of the lung, causing collapse and bleeding, and lodges at the 10th rib. Now, there is a exit wound, but the bullet doesn't come out because it hits the bulletproof vest. It's called a shored exit wound. Instead of being a cookie cutter sharp exit wound, it's a ragged edged wound. In summary, we have 2 bullets shot into this officer. I agree with the findings that this was a carefully staged suicide. This officer killed himself. Oops, sorry, George.
We'll open it up now for questions and answers, understanding the fact that there are criminal investigations ongoing from what we've learned from the investigation into Lieutenant Gliniewicz. We ask that media personnel here raise their hands just so we can answer everybody's questions in a timely fashion. Chief?
Sir.
Was it your sense that investigators were closing in on him? Tell us specifically what you believe was the pressure point that led to the suicide.
I think it was a culmination of issues over a 6-month period. That's what we learned in great detail from the text messages that we recovered in that 6,500 pages of text messages, combined with bank records, thousands of pages of those that were analyzed by an FBI forensic accountant at our request. So this process probably began about 6 months ago and then culminated to a peak within the week of the staged suicide.
Commander,
Yes, sir.
address the fact that for many of us, phone calls were coming in within 24, certainly within 48 hours, raising the word suicide. Certainly that must have come up in your task. During this time, a massive community memorial service was held, an honor funeral, which was attended by thousands of police officers, hailing him as a hero. Some in the community would probably ask you at this point how you could allow that kind of thing to happen when questions were being raised about the veracity of the crime so early. Would you address that?
The question is, and I'll surmise it for those in the back, is how we could allow a massive tribute to occur when there were rumors spreading throughout the community that this might be a suicide. It would be irresponsible on our part not to conduct a thorough and detailed investigation. And in the first several weeks of this investigation, there was nothing that we had that was leading us towards determining this as being a suicide. We conducted a thorough and detailed investigation that ultimately, with the support of the FBI, who worked with us lockstep, and other federal agencies by providing us support and all this information that ultimately led us to this conclusion.
And you pretty much right away there were no other fingerprints on the gun. You knew how to prove first that the bullet came from Gliniewicz' gun. What is the last month of the investigation entailed?
The last month of the investigation has entailed the review of those documents that we have obtained those text messages that you have a small sampling of. I mean, there are 6,500 of those deleted within a short period of time prior to the staged suicide. So the combination of all of that and other discoveries that we made throughout the investigation within the last 30 days led to this conclusion.
Less than after his death, were you made aware of this investigation into the financial activities that he's now allegedly involved in?
As is our protocol. The question was, how soon after his death did we start looking into the financial aspect? Am I correct? Did I become aware of that? As is our protocol in any investigation in a homicide, we immediately start requesting financial and background information. That's referred to as a victimology. That's inclusive of that. Part of the delay in obtaining that is some of that isn't readily available or immediately available from the sources. In this case, we had to extract that information through Quantico. Specifically, I'm referring to the text messaging, which took a substantial amount of time. The bank records, banks, some cooperate very quickly. Others, it may take 30 to 60 to 90 days to retrieve some of those records. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Is it possible that Lieutenant Gliniewicz' misdoings might not have been discovered had he not taken his own life?
I can tell you that eventually they would have been discovered, because regardless of the fact that Lieutenant Gliniewicz staged his suicide, the village of Fox Lake had begun conducting a thorough internal audit of all of their assets. And eventually, as we found was indicated in some of those messages that we retrieved, that was a concern, that audit was going to eventually lead to the discovery of this financial malfeasance.
Was that audit prompted by suspicions of the lieutenant, or prompted just because they were doing an audit?
No, I believe, and I don't want to answer out of turn for the village of Fox Lake, but I believe they're doing a systematic audit of the entire village. I understand the village administrator will be making some closing comments here. That would be a question I'd defer to her.
Talked about sign of a struggle. Can you say what specifically signs of a struggle that he left? Because was it torn clothes? Was he shoved? I mean, what were the signs of the struggle?
As you approach the crime scene itself, and I apologize we don't have any visuals for you, but we did provide you with a map, an overview of the area itself. As you approach it, you see first a canister of pepper spray with the safety taken off of it laying there. Some number of feet forward, now you see an expandable baton laying there. Again, towards the swampy area, now you find his glasses, his personal glasses laying there. And in fact, that's where we eventually discovered a shell casing, and that's where we believe that first self-inflicted wound took place. Then further on, ultimately, you find Gliniewicz. This is pretty classical if you look at any police policy of a use of force type of continuum. You start with your physical presence, you move on to another force weapon such as pepper spray, a baton. So this was laid out to seem as if there was an ongoing type of struggle through the scene. Yes.
On the body, this is not just an investigation involving what was on the scene, but was also on the body. On the body, was there any sign of struggle at that point in time? And was the coroner spoken to about that when your investigators were saying that, oh, there was a struggle?
We met with the coroner once we completed our entire victimology. It would be irresponsible for us to piecemeal something that critical. In an initial meeting, there were three components, and Dr. Ruddle confirmed this. that he bases his decision on: the forensics, the pathology, and the victimology. So to piecemeal something as critical as the victimology, and we've done as thorough a job on this victimology as any we've ever done. Now, your second question was, what was there on the body that didn't indicate? Well, we didn't see any signs of trauma to the hands or anything that would indicate that there was a struggle physically. The uniform was not disheveled. There was part of the stage scene, we believe, his microphone, which is generally clipped on, and I'm sorry I'm left-handed, he's right-handed, but it's clipped on your shoulder lapel. And usually in a pursuit or struggle, that always comes off for whatever reason. But there was nothing else to indicate where I've been involved in a number of arrests through my career, and just a simple traffic stop with a medium force resistor, your uniform becomes disheveled, your vest turns, there's all sorts of indicators there. There wasn't any of that, ultimately. In the back.
All right, stunning developments in Fox Lake, Illinois. The news now that Officer Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz, who initially was thought to have been killed in the line of duty by unknown perpetrators, in fact, investigators saying it was all part of a carefully staged suicide to cover up what they call, quote, his extensive criminal acts, Emery.
Yeah, indeed. They believe that he was involved in stealing money and money laundering from a program called the Fox Lake Police Explorers Post. They deal a lot with military equipment and that sort of thing, and so there would have been a lot of money going back and forth. They looked at his text messages, they looked at some of his financial information, and they say that they believe he staged this scene, and through the Explorers program, in fact, he had a lot of experience staging mock crime scenes. It's really not how anyone thought that this would unfold. There was a massive manhunt for now imaginary suspects,
right,
and tributes for days after learning of his death.
And there are a lot of questions still to be answered. Investigators saying that there are 2 other individuals that are connected to these financial irregularities. Yes, thank you. I can't even speak because I'm so stunned by this news.
Yeah.
And also that they're still investigating those 2 individuals. They would not name them. They say that this has been going on. This had been going on for 7 years. The other big questions that were raised, reporters asking in the days following his death, when investigators were probably at the very least suspicious that something was not very kosher in how he died, why they allowed the community to mourn the way that they did, thousands of police officers flying in from across the country, thousands of people at his remembrance funeral, and also putting the community at risk, at alarm, because they told everybody that they were looking for some perpetrators.
And there were also questions about why Officer Gliniewicz would choose to kill himself at this time, and the investigator said that there had been an ongoing audit, of the entire village, and based on some of the text messages that they have read, and they had 6,500 pages of text messages, there was some concern among the officer that through this audit, some of these irregularities, some of these thefts, this money laundering would come to the surface.
So that is the news out of Fox Lake, Illinois. Clearly, a lot of questions still to be answered. We're going to keep digging into this story.